Hong Kong, a global financial hub renowned for its towering skyscrapers, vibrant culture, and one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world. But beneath the glitz and glamour lies a harsh reality. A housing crisis so severe that thousands of people are forced to live in what are known as cage homes. Hong Kong is known to be the least affordable housing market on the planet. For perspective, a one-bedroom apartment can easily exceed $2,500 per month. If you want to invest into an apartment here in Hong Kong, the average cost for 1 square meter is around $40,000. Hong Kong is located in between China and the sea, and it is said that 75% of its territory cannot be built on because it is a mountainous area and it is simply hard to build houses on the ground. And therefore, it is absolutely necessary to build mega buildings such as these skyscrapers you can see in the background. Hong Kong is the city with most skyscrapers on Earth. It has more than 550 skyscrapers. And it is necessary to build such high buildings due to the high demand on housing. We are at a place that became famous because some influencers posted their photos here and went viral with it. Nowadays, it is a rather touristic place and there are lots of people taking their pictures here, smiling in front of these so-called monster buildings. Honestly, it does feel a little bit awkward to see that because, unfortunately, nobody actually seems to care about the story behind these buildings. People who live here face the reality of living in so-called cage homes or coffin homes. But what are these cage homes? Why do they exist? And what does it mean to live in one of these places? We'll explore that in today's video. The super high housing prices here in Hong Kong have created a divide. On one hand, you see luxury buildings catering to the ultra-rich, and on the other side, you can see buildings that definitely need some maintenance and are rather old. Some people here can barely make it through the month. This poverty has caused people to need to divide the apartments. So there are subdivided apartments that are known as coffin homes or cage homes. This means basically that a lot of people share an apartment, and we do this in Europe as well, but in Europe you actually have your own room, a space of privacy of at least 10 square meters, I'd say. But here in Hong Kong, these subdivided apartments can be, for example, so-called coffin homes, which are apartments that are subdivided into basically small cabins. And these cabins can be locked up and people need to have all of their belongings in there and sleep in there. There are tiny spaces and sometimes there are apartments that are shared by up to 20 people. So these coffin homes are mini homes, but it is still the more comfortable version than the cage home. Cage homes are exactly what they sound like. It's basically just a metal mesh and people need to sleep in there and keep all of their belongings in there. It is a tiny space that is more or less 1 by 2 meters big. These cages are often stacked on top of each other and there are a lot of cages stacked into one room. One of these cages can cost around $320 per month. US dollars, by the way. So it's super expensive for such a tiny space and for living in a cage. While there are lots of cage homes in one apartment, people need to share the bathroom and the kitchen. These cage homes were often meant to be a temporary housing, but unfortunately for many people became a long-term solution for various years or even decades. The people living in these cage homes have the option to live in the cages or on the streets. A lot of people actually prefer to stay on the streets instead of these cages. Hong Kong is simply lacking on subsidized apartments. There are some, but the demand is extremely high. It is said that about 70% of the population here in Hong Kong is in need of such an apartment. The waiting lists are extremely long. People usually wait for such an apartment 5 to 10 years. During that time, they need a temporary solution, obviously. So that's why lots of people end up in such monster buildings. There's one thing I really want to emphasize here. There are lots of YouTubers who make this sound like everybody in these kind of buildings is living in a cage home or a coffin home, and that is simply not true. We have just entered one of these apartments here in one of these buildings, and one local showed us his home. It was a very tiny one-room apartment and he's sharing it with his daughter. But it was a one-room apartment for him and his daughter and not a shared coffin home, for example. So not all of these buildings that you can see here have apartments like these coffin homes or cage homes even. Nevertheless, it is also important to mention that obviously these coffin homes exist here in Hong Kong. But the local just told us that usually immigrants from countries nearby live in these kinds of homes. Usually they are not Chinese or from Hong Kong, but rather countries such as the Philippines or Pakistan, for example. So these immigrants come here with a dream to make money and to have the opportunity to work and end up in these kind of homes due to reason of poverty and simply because they don't make enough money. And in general, again, the apartment we've seen here was tiny, but the cost of living here in Hong Kong is extremely high. And that causes lots of problems and struggles for local people. The origin of the cage home dates back to 1950. If you've seen the video about the history of Hong Kong already, you know that Hong Kong used to be a British colony. During that time, lots of immigrants came to Hong Kong in order to seek opportunities and work. Lots of them coming from China, but also other Asian countries. During that time, the city was growing by 1 million people every 10 years. There was a huge demand on housing, and landlords started to subdivide the apartments into smaller units, including cages. While the British had established a very strong and booming economy here in Hong Kong, with lots of factories and lots of work available, later on the financial sector became more profitable. Factories started to shut down and people started to focus on financial services. Nowadays, Hong Kong is known to be a great place to set up a company due to very low taxes. But of course, Hong Kong needs to generate an income as well. And they do that by selling land. Nowadays, there are a lot of external investors. A lot of foreign investors are willing to pay incredibly high prices to invest here in Hong Kong. And these investments are causing extremely high rents for the people who live here. While the rich are getting richer and richer, the normal worker seems to be forgotten here in Hong Kong. Today the problem persists due to skyrocketing real estate prices, a stagnant salary, and limited public housing. It is estimated that about 200,000 people live in subdivided apartments, including the coffin homes and the cage homes. The government of Hong Kong has promised reforms and more public housing, but the process has been slow and therefore there is only little hope for those people who have to live in those cage homes. As mentioned before, taxes here in Hong Kong are low and the government gets the money from selling land. The interest of external investors is huge. This financial market is simply more profitable than creating public housing. It seems like the government is rather preferring to earn income from external investors than in investing into public housing for their own people. I guess this is the price you pay if you live in a 100% capitalist country. A person that wants to buy property here in Hong Kong would need to save all of his money without spending a cent for about 42 years. Obviously, that's absolutely impossible, as people here usually spend about 60 to 70% of their salary just on housing each month. But it's not just the housing prices that are extremely expensive here in Hong Kong. It's also normal groceries. For example, 12 eggs will cost you 28 Hong Kong dollars, as well as 1 liter of milk. 200 grams of instant coffee would be 62 Hong Kong dollars, and 800 grams of oatmeal, almost 30 Hong Kong dollars. Let me know in the comment section if that appears expensive to you or if this is a rather normal price for you. Besides the food, there's also gasoline that is quite expensive, with about 2 euros 20 cents per liter. But that doesn't mean that there is little traffic here in Hong Kong, not at all. There's actually a lot of traffic, and you will see lots of luxury cars and expensive cars on the streets. Those who have some extra money left can even get a personalized car plate. Hong Kong's cage homes only highlight the stark inequality that exists in one of the richest places on earth. The city of Hong Kong is constantly being further developed. You can see luxury buildings and expensive cars everywhere in the city. And the city is constantly being further developed. It is nothing rare to see new skyscrapers being built. They are being built with a bamboo construct that does look a little bit scary, but it is safe to say that these guys know very well their handicraft. It is also not rare to see a very modern building for the rich next to a rather old building that definitely needs some maintenance. So behind the shining skyline of Hong Kong, there are stories to be told of resilience and hardship. It is said that of the 8 million people that live here in Hong Kong, about 2 million of them live in poverty. Change is clearly necessary, and the change needs to come from the government, developers, and the society in general. It will be a long process, and until then, the question remains, until when is this crisis going to last? And how much more do the people of Hong Kong need to suffer under the extreme cost of living?